All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a really fascinating and honestly incredibly powerful piece of academic research and breaking it down into accessible, eye-opening insights. Because let's face it, this affects almost all of us at some point in our careers. We're going to be looking at a brand new 2025 doctoral dissertation on workplace toxicity and unethical leadership. My goal today is to unpack this dense scholarly work so we can clearly understand the actual science behind why bad bosses do so much damage, and more importantly, what we can learn from it.
So, have you ever worked for a truly toxic boss? I mean, I'm willing to bet a lot of you just had a visceral reaction to that question. Maybe your stomach kind of dropped, or you suddenly remembered that one old manager who just made your life absolutely miserable. It's this universal, deeply painful experience. But you might be wondering, why do we need a complex academic study about something we already know is awful? Well, because for a long time, we've just treated bad leadership as an unfortunate reality of the business world, like a minor headache. But as we'll see, science tells a much darker story. Unethical leadership isn't just an annoyance. It fundamentally rewires the organizational culture and deeply impacts the psychological well-being of the people stuck inside it. And that brings us right to our source material for today, Dr. Andrea Harris's incredibly rigorous 2025 PhD dissertation. Dr. Harris conducted an in-depth study focusing specifically on federal employees and government contractors in the Philadelphia region. And look, she didn't just casually ask people if they liked their managers. She systematically investigated how unethical behaviors, we're talking manipulation, exploitation, dishonesty, sheer abuse of authority, how those things actually disrupt a person's psychological needs. By interviewing people who literally lived through these toxic environments, Dr. Harris set out to uncover the exact toll unethical leadership takes on us. She basically translated these invisible emotional struggles into documented, hard scientific data. Now, to make sense of all this, Dr. Harris used a classic framework you might actually remember from Psych 101, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Think of it like building a house. At the very bottom, you've got your basic physiological security, like keeping your job so you can pay the rent. The next level up is safety, meaning you feel secure from retaliation or harassment. Only when those basic levels are secure can you build up to belonging, esteem, and finally, self-actualization, which is, reaching your full potential. So the absolute crucial point here is this. If a bad boss cracks your basic sense of safety and trust, the very foundation of the house, you can never build the roof. You are permanently stuck in the basement. So what was the actual roadmap here? Dr. Harris brilliantly boiled it down to 3 core research questions to figure out exactly how bad leadership destroys an organization from the inside out. First, how does unethical leadership impact employee morale? Second, how does it impact turnover rates? Like, how does it literally drive people to just pack up and quit? And third, how does it impact overall trust among employees and stakeholders? By targeting these 3 specific areas, she was able to pinpoint the exact mechanics of workplace toxicity. Right, so let's draw a sharp contrast based on what the research actually found. On one hand, you've got what we all fundamentally want and need to thrive at work: psychological safety, a sense of belonging, and the esteem that comes from, doing good work. On the other side, we have what unethical leaders actually create. Dr. Harris found that toxic bosses generate this intense atmosphere of fear, emotional exhaustion, and extreme withdrawal. Instead of collaboration, you get manipulation. Instead of fairness, favoritism. The study found that these unethical practices aren't just isolated, one-off incidents. They literally become embedded into the culture itself, totally normalizing secrecy and fear. And this toxic environment, it forces people into what Dr. Harris categorized as survival behaviors. It's exactly what it sounds like. When you are stripped of your psychological safety, you stop trying to innovate. Actually, scratch that. You stop trying to even help your teammates. You completely abandon your professional growth and just shift into basic survival mode. In this study, participants talked about withdrawing, remaining completely silent during meetings, or just blindly complying with conflicting and sometimes even unethical directives just to avoid retaliation. They weren't working to succeed, they were working simply to protect themselves from their own bosses. When you look at the data from the study, it paints a pretty vivid and honestly kind of grim picture. Mapping back to those 3 core research questions, the breakdown is striking. A massive 33.3% of the data points straight to negative trust outcomes, and another 30% points to overwhelmingly negative morale. Interestingly, turnover was kind of split. Some people left, sure, but others felt so trapped by their need for financial security that they stayed despite the toxicity. But the huge takeaway here is that unethical leadership universally results in shattered trust and absolutely destroyed morale across the board. No exceptions. Okay, let me highlight a staggering statistic for you. 90% out of all the participants interviewed in these toxic environments, a massive 90% experienced broken trust with their leadership. And we aren't talking about a minor disagreement over a marketing strategy here. This was fundamental trust broken by dishonest communication, manipulation, and leaders completely failing to protect their people. Think about that. When 9 out of 10 employees feel they literally cannot trust the person steering the ship, the entire organization is effectively paralyzed. But wait, here's the truly devastating follow-up fact. For 80% of that total sample, the trust wasn't just broken, it was completely shattered and never repaired. Never. Only a tiny fraction of people said trust was ever even partially restored, and even then, they admitted it was incredibly fragile. This proves that toxic cultures cause permanent structural damage to relationships. It totally pushes back against that corporate myth that a simple apology or, a mandatory team-building retreat can magically fix a toxic workplace. The science clearly shows that once a leader behaves unethically, the damage to trust is largely irreversible.
So, what does all this actually mean for us in the real world, right? How do we fix it? Well, Dr. Harris lays out some really clear, practical steps organizations have to take to protect employee well-being and stop this misconduct before it even starts. Step 1, foster psychological safety. People absolutely need to know they won't be punished just for speaking up. Step 2, implement ethical training. And no, not just another boring compliance video you click through, but real scenario-based learning so leaders grasp the true weight of their decisions. And step 3, create transparent reporting systems. If someone spots a toxic boss, there has to be a safe, transparent way to report it without any fear of retaliation. It's all about building a culture of accountability, literally from the ground up. As we start to wrap up this explainer, I really think it's important to recognize the profound human impact of this kind of academic work. There's this beautiful quote from Dr. Harris's acknowledgments. She wrote, "Your honesty, courage, and willingness to share your lived experiences gave this research life and meaning. Without you, this work would not exist." Academic research can sometimes feel a bit dry or detached, but Dr. Harris's dedication here gave a legitimate scientific voice to invisible workers. She validated the silent struggles of people who felt utterly trapped in the basement of Maslow's hierarchy, proving, once and for all, that their pain wasn't just in their heads, it was a systemic failure of leadership. So I want to leave you with one final, kind of provocative thought to consider today. Based on the overwhelming data we just explored, if trust in a workplace is fundamentally shattered by a single unethical leader, can it ever truly be rebuilt? Or is the foundation just cracked forever? It really makes you reflect on the immense fragility of workplace trust and the lasting legacy of the leaders we actually choose to follow, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me in breaking down this incredible research. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.